Unstoppable Introvert Project. I'm Dr. David Hooper, and today I want to talk about anxiety, but from a slightly different angle. Not just what it feels like when it's bad, not just how draining it can be, not just how frustrating it is when your own mind makes everything feel heavier than it needs to be. I actually want to talk about anxiety when it comes to living better, because anxiety's definitely made parts of my life harder. It's made normal things feel bigger than they needed to feel. It's made simple decisions feel more loaded. It's made resting harder. It's made enjoyment harder. It's made good moments feel less settled than they should be. And if you live with anxiety, you probably know exactly what I mean. You can be doing all the right things on the outside. You can be working hard, showing up, build something meaningful. You can be in the gym, you can be training. You can be trying to become better. And yet internally, it can still feel noisy. It can feel like your mind is running ahead of you almost like you are paying a mental tax on anything and everything. And it's exhausting. But at the same time, anxiety has forced me to learn things that I really think matter. Anxiety's forced me to think more deeply about my own peace, about my own presence and perspective, how I best protect my energy. I've learned more how to notice good moments instead of constantly sprinting past them. And I've kind of tried to learn more about not spending my whole life in my head while my actual life is happening in front of me. And that's what we're going to get into today. Because I think a lot of people live with anxiety whilst also trying to build a big and meaningful life. They're not sitting on the sidelines, they're in the game. They're working, leading, parenting, building businesses, chasing goals, trying to stay healthy, trying to become more disciplined, trying to improve themselves. All the while, their own mind is making the whole process feel louder and more expensive than it looks from the outside. And I know that feeling very well. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about what anxiety's kind of cost me. I want to get vulnerable and personal, but much more importantly, it's about what I've learned from that and what you can do to use your anxiety in a different way. Because I don't want to just cope my way through life. That's never been my intention. I don't want to build a life that looks good from the outside, but then feels rushed and tense and stressed and half experienced on the inside. I want to actually live it. I want to enjoy more of it, feel more of it, be more present in it. And I think anxiety, strangely enough, has almost forced me to take that idea more seriously. I now value my health a lot more and really find solace going to the gym and going on runs and all these different things. So that is where we're going to get into today. So sit back, relax, grab a coffee, and let's get into this. The part people don't talk enough when it comes to anxiety is this. It doesn't just affect the bad moments. Sometimes it affects the good ones too. And that has happened to me on a few occasions. I think most people understand that anxiety can make life difficult when things are stressful, pretty obvious. If something's uncertain or if something's quite high stakes, if you're under pressure, if there's conflict, if there's difficult conversations coming, if money's tight, if your health is worrying you, or if life's unstable, I think that those bits make sense when it comes to having an anxiety flare-up or panic attacks. But something I didn't expect or appreciate for quite a long time was how much anxiety could interfere with enjoyment. That's the bit I think people don't actually talk enough about. I've had times where on paper things were going great. Work was moving, I was making progress, good things were happening, maybe I'd achieved something or I've had a good day, and my mind would not let me settle into it. I'd still be tense, scanning, anticipating, half braced for the next thing, the next problem possibly. I'd be planning, mentally jumping ahead, asking myself, what now? What's the next step? What's the next problem to solve? And it is exhausting because it makes you realize anxiety doesn't just show up to ruin obviously bad moments. It can quietly steal from the good ones too. It can sit in the background of a nice meal or a nice family day, or even a work win or a holiday, a peaceful evening when you're having a glass of wine. It can sit there whispering, do not get comfortable. What have you forgotten? What's next? What might go wrong? And when you live like that for long enough, you can start to realize something quite uncomfortable. You can build a better life and still struggle to experience it. And that was a wake-up call. It happened to me over Christmas. I had a challenging client who was very demanding, and all through that Christmas period, I cancelled events. When I was watching a Christmas film, my mind was racing, and it got to a point where I had to make a change. Because what is the point in working hard to create better things, more health, more freedom, more growth, more opportunities, if your mind is so tense that you never really let yourself arrive in any of it? That honestly hit me in the face over Christmas 2025. I think for a long time, I was very focused on improvement, progress, momentum, standards, feeling like I was pushing forward. And of course, I still care about that. But anxiety almost asks deeper questions like, can you actually enjoy any of the life you're working so hard to build? Because if the answer is no, then something needs attention. And I think that's important for the ambitious people in the room, because ambitious people get praised for their drive, for productivity, for their movement, resilience, for always going again. But one downside of that is that you can become incredibly good at moving the goalposts. You hit the target, immediately create a new one. You achieve something, you instantly minimize it, focus on the next thing. You get through a hard week, and instead of acknowledging it, you just move on to the next challenge. You solve one problem and your mind is already busy creating the next 10. That is not always ambition. Sometimes it's anxiety wearing ambition's clothes. And it's quite a big distinction, because from the outside, it can look like hunger and discipline and drive, but internally, it can feel like never being allowed to exhale, like you're constantly holding your breath. And that's something I have fully experienced. There have been times where I've struggled to stay with good moments because my brain was so conditioned to scan for the next threat, the next problem, the next thing to manage. And again, it's not just tiring. It's really quite upsetting. It's sad. It's lonely, because life isn't just meant to be managed. It's meant to be experienced. And anxiety has taught me that if I do not become more deliberate about that, I can miss huge parts of my own life while trying to improve it. And if you're listening to this today, we're going to figure out how to make sure that you are more deliberate and that you don't miss out on your life. If I had to put it simply, anxiety's taught me that enjoying life, it's not always automatic. Maybe for some people it is, but for me, it's more deliberate than that. I've had to learn how to pause, how to notice my mood, how to stay in a moment for longer than my anxious mind naturally wants. Also, how to stop racing past something good as if it barely counts. And one of the examples that I always think back to is over Christmas. I had a couple of funny situations. So on a Saturday, my wife and my dog Luna go for a long walk. We drive for an hour, walk in the hills or the forest or the country. It's beautiful. And on the drive, my wife and I normally get a Monster, and she gets a coffee, I get a Monster. We sip them as we drive for the hour, and we listen to a podcast. She loves true crime podcasts, and I've started to listen to them as well. And they're really good. They're really good. And I was realizing I was getting through these podcasts, which are like 45 minutes to an hour, and not having a clue what the podcast was even about, because my mind had been drifting all over the place. So it's those things. Start to notice these things where you realize, oh, what have I actually been thinking about? What's my anxious mind actually been thinking about? Because certainly when good things happen, my mind just is like, what next? What could go wrong? How long will this last? What am I missing? What have I forgotten? What's unresolved? What pressure is coming tomorrow? That's anxiety. And if you don't catch it, you can spend years living like that, always managing and anticipating, half tense, always mentally in the future, and never really landing in your actual life. So one of the biggest things anxiety's taught me is that presence matters. Not in some vague, fluffy, spiritual way or overly spiritual way, but in a practical way. If you do not learn how to be where you are, you can miss your life while you're trying to improve it. And that, it scares me. But it also matters to me as well, because I don't want to be that person who is constantly chasing a better future while being unavailable for the present. It's just not a good trade. And presence for me often looks very ordinary. It's not always about some deep meditation moment on a mountain. Sometimes it's just being on a walk and actually noticing where I am, instead of mentally rehearsing 10 imaginary conversations, which, we all do as anxious, ambitious people. Sometimes it's finishing a workout and letting myself actually just feel good about it, instead of immediately looking in the mirror and thinking, I wish I was more muscular or leaner or fitter. Sometimes it's being with people and just truly listening rather than being physically present but mentally elsewhere. Sometimes it's sitting with a cup of coffee, no phone, no scrolling, no noise, no future planning, and just enjoying the atmosphere of the coffee shop. Or, I went on holiday to Kos in October 2025 and sat in a coffee shop on the beach, just watching the waves. It was unbelievable, and I felt incredible. And that's presence too. Anxiety's made me realize how much I need that, and we all need that. I think another thing anxiety's taught me is that pausing is a skill. When something goes well, I now try to stop and acknowledge it, not to just rush into the next pressure, not to minimize it or brush it off. It counts. It's bigger than something that can just get brushed off. It counts. Notice it. However you want to. That mattered. That was a good moment. That was a good effort. That was progress. That is worth registering. And it sounds simple, but it does not come naturally to me, and I'm sure it doesn't to you either if you're listening to this. And I think for many people, especially those of us who are wired to improve and to develop, pausing can almost feel uncomfortable, unproductive, indulgent, if you will, like you've taken the foot off the gas. But I don't believe that. I used to, but I don't believe that anymore. It's a healthy way to live, because I think if your brain never gets to register progress, then no amount of progress will ever feel like enough, and that's a dangerous loop. The next thing anxiety's taught me is that peace needs protecting, not obsessively or perfectly, but more consciously. Ask yourself a couple of questions. What are you feeling all day? What are you rehearsing all day or consuming all day? What are you scrolling through? What conversations are you replaying? What fear are you giving center stage in your mind? Because anxiety loves attention. It loves analyzing. It loves constantly checking. It loves rehearsing worst case scenarios. It loves making you believe that if you think about something enough, you can somehow control it. But in reality, all that often happens is your nervous system stays activated and your peace gets drained. So living better for me has meant becoming more intentional about what I allow to live in my head all day. That does not mean pretending problems don't exist. It means not giving fear unlimited airtime. It means noticing when my mind is starting to loop, choosing not to keep feeding it. It means reducing unnecessary stimulation when I already am overloaded mentally. It means protecting sleep better, protecting my workouts, protecting my quiet time, which is often getting up early before anyone else in the house is, protecting those boundaries when family are trying to get their claws in a bit too much and saying, no, I need this weekend to myself. I protect the habits that help me stay more solid. And another thing, just while I think about it, anxiety's taught me that slowing down is not a weakness either. There's wisdom in that, and that's been hard as well. Because when you're driven, slowing down can feel like failure, like you are falling behind, like everyone else is moving forward and you've pressed the pause button. But sometimes slowing down is exactly what stops you from mentally running yourself into the ground. Sometimes slowing down is what allows you to think clearly, to feel properly again, to make better decisions again, to get your energy back. Anxiety has definitely taught me that running harder it's not always the answer. Sometimes the better answer is breathing, stepping back, simplifying, doing less, but doing it with more presence and direction. I think as well, the thing about anxiety is that you don't have to wait until it disappears to have a great life. Because if you make peace dependent on having a perfect mind, you may be waiting a very long time. I have this habit of thinking in extremes. I'm all in or I'm all out. I would think once I feel better, then I'll enjoy things more. Once my mind calms down, then I'll settle into my new routine. Once life feels less noisy, then I'll be more present. But days pass, weeks pass, months pass. You miss all these situations and you realize life does not always work like that. Sometimes you have to learn how to live better while still dealing with some noise. Sometimes you have to build peace practices almost before you feel peaceful. Sometimes you have to choose presence before it feels natural. And sometimes you have to protect your life from anxiety without waiting for anxiety to ask permission. And that's, a very practical lesson as well. I also think it's important to be honest about the costs, what anxiety costs you. Because while this episode is about what anxiety's taught me, I don't want to dress it up either and act like it's been some lovely teacher all the time. It's a motherfucker. And it's cost me too. It cost me energy, time, and that's something I really want to highlight. It's tiring. Even when nothing dramatic's happening, it can feel like there is this app running in the background all day, draining your battery. You're having conversations, doing work, exercising, showing up, trying to be productive, but underneath there is this tension, background noise, overthinking, emotional static almost, and it's exhausting, and it costs you enjoyment. There have been moments I should have enjoyed more than I did, wins I should have sat with longer, good days I should have been more available for, conversations I should have been more present in. Not because I didn't care, but because mentally I was putting out fires in my mind. Other things that anxiety's cost me is simplicity. A small decision can feel huge. A simple task can feel complicated. An upcoming event can feel like something to manage for days beforehand. And when that becomes normal, life can start feeling really heavy. It's cost me peace, not all the time and not every day, but enough to know that peace is now something I really value. Because when you've experienced what it feels like to be internally restless, you stop taking calm for granted. You stop taking a quiet mind for granted, or a settled evening, or even just daily ease. And maybe that is one of the strange gifts hidden inside this struggle. You start to value things that other people might race past. A calm morning, a good night's sleep, a nice walk, a good workout, a good conversation, a simple moment where your mind is not trying to drag you somewhere else. Those things matter more to me now because I know what it feels like when they're missing. It's cost me confidence at times too, because anxiety can make you doubt yourself. It can make you question whether you're coping well, whether you're strong enough, whether you are making the right decision, whether you are handling things the way you should. It can create hesitation, and hesitation, repeated often enough, can start affecting how you see yourself. And that is real. So sure, anxiety's taught me lots of things, but it's also cost me things as well. And I think both can be true at the same time. So if you're living with anxiety as well, here are 3 things that have really helped me quite often, consistently enough where I really want to share them with you. So the first one is I force myself to pause when something good happens. If I don't do this, I just move the goalposts immediately. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Maybe you finish a hard week and maybe you hit a target or have a good workout. And then what does your mind do? Great job, what's next? No pause, no acknowledgement, no real registration, just what's on the agenda next. So now I try and stop and say, that mattered, that went well, I'm proud of that. This is evidence, this is progress. And saying it out loud to yourself in the mirror is a great thing to do as well. And it might sound basic, but it changes the way you experience these things. Because if you don't pause to acknowledge that progress, your brain starts acting like nothing counts. And then you end up permanently hungry, permanently restless, and permanently unimpressed by your own effort. And that's just not healthy. So a practical example might be this. You've been anxious about a meeting all week. It goes well. The old pattern is to instantly move on and think about the next pressure. The better pattern is to disrupt that and say, I handled that. That mattered. I was nervous, but I still showed up well. And you start to build some self-trust. Another example, let's say you've been struggling mentally, but you've got yourself to the gym or went for a run or something active. Again, don't just brush past it, register it, because the anxious mind is often very good at recording what is wrong and very poor at recording what is right. You have to help it. Second, don't let every feeling become a fact. And this one is really important. Anxiety can make things feel bigger, heavier, and more urgent than they really are. Feelings are more powerful. When something feels threatening, it's very easy to assume it's threatening, or things that feel urgent, you assume that you have to deal with it immediately. But feelings aren't always facts. It doesn't mean those feelings don't matter. It just means that they're not always accurate. So I personally had to get better at asking myself, is it true what I'm saying, what the story and narrative I'm telling myself? Or is anxiety telling me a fib, a lie? Is this a real problem or a projected one? Is it worth my attention, or am I just feeding my spiral? And what evidence do I actually have? That little pause creates a little bit of space to slow the spiral before it gains momentum. So let's say, just for an example, maybe someone sends a short message. Anxiety says they're annoyed, something's wrong, you've upset them. Then you would pause. And then you'd ask yourself, do I know that? Or am I filling in the blanks with fear? Another example, maybe you've got a big event coming up, a presentation or a big meeting. Anxiety says, this is going to go badly. You're going to mess it up. It's going to be a disaster waiting to happen. Again, pause. Do I know that? Have I prepared effectively? Or am I responding to a feeling as if it is certainty? These tools don't magically remove anxiety, but it gives you more of a choice, because without that pause, anxiety drives the whole car. We want anxiety in the passenger seat where we can keep an eye on it. Thirdly, I tend to move. I like to move. Training, running. I love running, long distance running. I like to get in the gym, on the weights. I love getting out, walking with Luna, my dog, not because movement solves anything, but for me it interrupts the noise. It brings me back into my body, gets me out of the loops in my head, burns off some of that excess mental energy. It just gives me a bit of a healthier focus. And it also helps me process things without forcing myself to overthink. There's something powerful about movement when your mind is too loud. And I think that's because anxious people, we live very heavily in our minds. Movement helps bring you back to the body. And sometimes that shift alone can take the intensity down. So for me, movement has become just part of living better with anxiety, not just coping with it. It's not punishment. It's not just performance or to look good naked, I wish. It's about mental maintenance, which I think is really, really important. So if I've got a big presentation or I'm on stage or I've got a meeting or whatever, I will run, I'll get in the gym, I'll try and feel really good about myself. And I think that really, really helps. I think a fourth, if I can quickly add a fourth, is that anxiety and overwhelm are pretty close friends. You know, they know each other well. So when life gets cluttered and when too many things are unfinished, every part of your environment is it's noisy. And anxiety can often get louder with that. So sometimes what helps is not doing more, it's simplifying. Finish that one thing, reduce the commitment, get one task out of your head onto paper, tidy your desk or your room, create a plan for the day. And I think that, simplifying and organizing helps the mind a lot as well, because the mind can only hold so much before everything starts to feel more chaotic than it really is. And funnily enough, currently, I need to empty my brain onto a piece of paper. I can feel myself kind of opening tabs in my brain, and I know that I need to empty my brain onto my iPad or onto a piece of paper, and I'll feel so much better. So it's something you can be aware of, that self-awareness as well. So what does living better actually mean to me now? I think one of the biggest changes in me has been how I live. When I was younger, I probably looked more external, achievements, momentum, progress, winning, success. And I do care about all those things. I care about pushing myself, my ambition and my standards. But anxiety's made me realize it's very much internal. So I need to enjoy what I'm doing. I need to be in good moments without mentally leaving them. I need to look after my peace. I need to look after my goals in terms of going after them, of course, but without destroying my nervous system as well. Because I don't want to just make progress when I'm all clenched and stressed. I want to enjoy the process more. And that really matters to me now. A better life isn't just more output. A better life is more presence, more perspective, more steadiness, more ability to be where I am, and more capacity to enjoy the simple things as well, it's a very different definition to what it would have been 10 years ago. But I think it's a much better one as well. Because there are people who look successful, but are miserable inside. There are people who are productive, but never peaceful. There are people who are achieving, but barely experiencing their own lives. And I just don't want that. So anxiety, strangely, has helped me value a richer kind of success. Not just what I build, but how I experience my life when I build it as well. For me, there are still days when I rush, I still overthink, I struggle to be in that moment. There's still days when my mind gets noisy and tries to drag me away from what's right in front of me. But now at least I recognize it faster, because awareness gives you that chance to respond differently. We can breathe, we can slow down, we can move our bodies, we can challenge the thought, we can simplify, we can look for what is real. And to me, that is living a better life. Not the total absence of anxiety, but a better relationship with your own mind. So if you live with anxiety too, I want to leave you with this. Yes, it can make life feel heavy. Yes, it can make things feel louder, bigger, and more draining than they need to feel. Yes, it can steal from good moments if you let it, but it can also teach you things. It can teach you how important peace is, how important presence is, to protect your attention, to notice your wins, to stop racing through your own life, to learn that your mind does not have to dictate every experience you have. And maybe that is part of living better. Not waiting until your mind is perfect, not waiting until every anxious thought disappears, not waiting until you finally become some completely calm and unaffected version of yourself, but getting better at protecting your peace, noticing your wins, questioning the spiral, moving your body, simplifying where you can, and actually letting yourself experience some of the life you are working so hard to build. It's still something I'm learning, but I wanted to share that with you today. Life isn't just about surviving. You've got to be present for it. And if anxiety's taught me anything, it is that peace is not something to leave to chance. Protect it. If this episode's resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. Make sure you find us on all social media at Dr. David Hooper. Send me a DM if you want me to cover a certain topic or you want to ask a mindset question. I hope you're enjoying the episodes. And of course, until next time, stay unstoppable.